She handed me a check for $47 and a handwritten note that said, "Consider us even." $47. After everything I had done, after every single sacrifice, every birthday I missed, every promotion I turned down, every night I drove 3 hours each way just to sit in a hospital waiting room so she wouldn't be alone, she handed me a check for $47 and looked me straight in the eye like that settled it. Like that erased the years. Like that was the price of a daughter. I stood in the driveway of the house I grew up in, the house I had paid the mortgage on for the last 2 years without a single word of thanks, and I looked down at that check, and I looked up at her face, and I felt something inside me go completely, permanently quiet. Not angry. Not sad. Just done. And if you think that's the worst part of this story, I need you to keep listening. Because what I found out 3 days later, what I found tucked inside a filing cabinet in the back of my mother's closet, while I was helping pack up the house, she was signing over to my brother. That changed everything. That turned a story about a daughter who gave too much into something I don't even have a word for yet. Keep listening. Her name is Ashley Marie Greer, and she is 34 years old, living in a 2-bedroom apartment on the east side of Nashville, Tennessee, which she has been renting for 6 years and has slowly, carefully turned into something that feels like a home, even though it technically belongs to someone else. The apartment is on the 3rd floor of a pale brick building 2 blocks from Shelby Park, and in the spring you can smell the honeysuckle through the window she always leaves cracked above the kitchen sink, and in the winter the radiator makes a sound like a tired old man trying to clear his throat, and she has learned to love that sound because it means she is warm and she is still here, and that is more than it used to mean. Ashley is the kind of woman people describe as capable before they describe her as anything else, and she has complicated feelings about that. She is 5'4" with dark brown hair she usually wears in a low ponytail because she is always running slightly behind schedule, and she has her father's sharp green eyes and her grandmother's tendency to laugh too loud and too suddenly in situations that probably should not be funny. She works as a senior project coordinator at a mid-size healthcare logistics company called Meridian Supply Partners, which is a job that sounds boring when she describes it at parties, but actually requires her to hold approximately 900 moving pieces in her head simultaneously and keep them from crashing into each other, which she is exceptionally good at. She makes $62,000 a year, which in Nashville is enough to live on comfortably, but not enough to feel safe, not when you are also quietly sending money home every month. And Ashley has been sending money home for 7 years. Not a set amount, not a formal arrangement, just a constant quiet hemorrhage that started small and grew in the way that quiet things always do. Slowly, then suddenly, then so completely that you cannot remember what your finances looked like before it. Home is Memphis. Specifically, a gray split-level house on Whitmore Drive in the Raleigh neighborhood on the north side of the city, where Ashley grew up, the oldest of 2 children born to Diane Greer, 58 years old, former church secretary, full-time personality, and her younger brother Kevin, who is 30 years old, lives in the basement of that gray split level on Whitmore Drive, and has been between jobs for most of the last 4 years in the specific way. That means he is not actually looking. Their father, Robert Greer, left when Ashley was 11 and Kevin was 7. He did not leave dramatically. He did not yell or throw things or have an affair, or at least not one that anyone could prove. He just one morning loaded 2 suitcases into the back of a dark green Pontiac and drove away toward Atlanta, where he had, it turned out, been quietly building a second life for approximately 3 years. He sent birthday cards for a while, then Christmas cards, then nothing. Diane Greer responded to this by becoming 2 things simultaneously, deeply religious and deeply helpless. She leaned into the church with the intensity of a woman who has decided that if God is watching, he might as well get a good show. She sang in the choir, ran the hospitality committee, organized the annual canned food drive, and was beloved by every elderly woman within a 5-mile radius of Greater Hope Baptist Church on Summer Avenue. But at home, behind the front door painted red because a neighbor once told her red doors kept bad luck out, she was a woman who could not change a light bulb, could not call the plumber, could not open a confusing piece of mail without feeling what she called her nerves coming on, and had decided, somewhere in the quiet of her own reasoning, that Ashley would handle it. Ashley handled it. She handled it at 13, when the electricity got shut off, and she was the one who found the number for the utility company in the yellow pages and negotiated a payment arrangement that she did not entirely understand but executed correctly. She handled it at 16, when Diane's car needed a new alternator, and Ashley spent 2 weeks babysitting every kid on the block to raise money for the repair. She handled it at 18, when she should have been filling out college applications, and instead was helping Kevin through a phase he went through that nobody in the family talked about directly, but that everyone understood involved more than recreational amounts of marijuana, and a concerning amount of time spent with a group of boys who were not going anywhere good. She got herself to Tennessee State University in Nashville anyway, on a combination of financial aid, 2 scholarships, a work-study position, and a loan she spent the next 6 years paying off. She studied business administration. She graduated in the middle of her class, which she privately considered a miracle, given the number of times she had driven back to Memphis on weekends, because Diane needed her. She got the job at Meridian. She built her life, or she tried to, in the spaces around all the ways Memphis still needed pieces of her. The money started because of the roof. 2 years after Ashley graduated, a section of the roof on the Whitmore Drive house started leaking badly enough that Diane was putting pots on the floor in 2 rooms when it rained. The repair estimate was $4,000. Diane called Ashley on a Tuesday afternoon in October and described the situation with the specific combination of details and helplessness that Ashley had been trained since childhood to respond to like a reflex. Ashley put $2,000 on her credit card and called 3 different contractors until she found one who would do the job for $3,800. She paid the remaining $1,800 from her savings account. She told herself it was a one-time thing. It was not a one-time thing. There was the car insurance that lapsed because Diane forgot to renew it. There was the credit card debt that Diane had accumulated buying things Ashley would later describe as entirely unnecessary. Decorative plates, a massage chair that sat in the corner of the living room and was used approximately twice, a subscription to a meal kit service that Diane canceled after 2 weeks but forgot to cancel before being charged for 2 months. There was Kevin's phone bill, which Ashley started paying because Diane asked her to, just temporarily, just until Kevin got back on his feet, which had now been 3 years ago with no feet getting back on in sight. There was the second mortgage. That was the one that made Ashley's stomach hurt every time she thought about it, which was often. Diane had taken out a home equity loan 4 years ago without telling Ashley, using the house that Robert Greer's parents had left to Diane after his mother died, the house that was technically the one asset the family had, as collateral. She had used the money to, as far as Ashley could reconstruct, pay off various smaller debts and fund a trip to the Bahamas with 3 women from her church that she still referenced as one of the best experiences of her life. The monthly payment on the second mortgage was $412. For the last 2 years, Ashley had been paying it. Not because Diane asked her directly. Because one afternoon, Diane had called crying about how she was going to lose the house, and Ashley had said, "What are you talking about?" And Diane had explained about the loan in the specific way she explained uncomfortable truths, partially, vaguely, with enough emotional distress surrounding it that getting the actual facts felt cruel. And by the end of the conversation, Ashley had somehow agreed to help and was only later going over her bank statements, able to calculate what help was actually costing her. She did not resent her mother. That was the thing Ashley told herself, and for most of those years it was even mostly true. She loved Diane with the particular fierce and tired love of someone who has decided that a person's helplessness is not their fault, that some people are just built for being taken care of, and the world had not given Diane the partner she needed, and so Ashley would be that partner, would be the responsible one, would be the one who made sure the lights stayed on and the roof held and nobody fell too far. She told herself she did not resent it. What she did not tell herself, what she kept in a small locked room at the back of her mind that she did not spend too much time in because she did not entirely trust what she would find there, was that she had not taken the promotion at Meridian 18 months ago. The one that would have required her to transfer to the Denver office. The one that would have been a $14,000 raise and a title change, and a whole new version of her life opening up like a door she had always known was there. She had told her manager, a kind and faintly bewildered man named Doug, that she was not ready for the relocation. She had sat in his office with its view of the Gulch neighborhood and told him she had family obligations that made a move difficult right now. Doug had been understanding in the way that managers are understanding when they have already made other plans, and the promotion had gone to a 29-year-old man named Garrett who had no family obligations and significantly less experienced than Ashley, and who was now, 18 months later, doing the job she would have been doing, in the office she would have been working in, at the salary that would have made all of it. Every payment, every drive. Every pot on the floor in the rain, a little easier to absorb. She had not told Diane about the promotion. She had not told Kevin. She had not told anyone except her best friend Tiffany, who lived 2 floors above her in the same building, and who had responded to this information by sitting silently for a long moment, and then saying, with the precise and devastating accuracy of someone who has known you long enough to skip the preamble, "Ashley, you are going to have to decide when enough is enough, because nobody is going to decide it for you." That was 14 months ago. Ashley had thought about it every week since. All right, before we go any further, if you are new here, please do me a favor and hit that subscribe button right now, because stories like this one are exactly what this channel is built on, and you do not want to be the person who missed the ending. Hit the like button too, because it genuinely helps this story reach the people who need to hear it. Share it with someone in your life. You know the person I'm talking about, the one who gives and gives and gives and never gets anything back, because they need to hear what's coming. And drop me a comment right now, and tell me what city you're in, what country you're listening from, and what time it is right where you are, because I want to see exactly how far this story travels, and every single one of your comments means more to me than you know. All right, let's get back into it. The call that started everything came on a Thursday in February, which is the worst month in Nashville, because it cannot decide if it is winter or not, and ends up being a gray and uncertain in-between that matches the mood of nobody's best days. Ashley was at her desk, eating a sad desk lunch of leftover rice and black beans from the night before when her phone lit up with Kevin's name. She almost did not answer. Kevin called her with the same frequency, and for the same 3 reasons. He needed money, he needed her to talk to Diane about something he did not want to deal with himself, or he was bored. And Ashley had been in a particular mood that week that made all 3 of those options feel like more than she had bandwidth for. But she answered. She always answered. "Hey," he said, and she could tell immediately from the single syllable that this was not a board call or a money call. There was something different in his voice, something she had not heard before, something she would spend a long time later trying to name. "What's going on?" she said. "Mom wants to have a family meeting," Kevin said. "This weekend, she wants you to come home." "Kevin, I was just there 3 weeks ago." "I know," she said, "it's important," she said, and here he paused, and the pause was long enough that Ashley put down her fork. She said, "There's stuff she needs to tell us. About the house." Ashley felt the thing in her stomach that she always felt when the word house and stuff appeared in the same sentence from her mother's mouth. "What stuff?" "She wouldn't tell me. She said she wanted to do it in person." "Is she okay? Is she sick?" "She's fine. She's healthy. It's not that." Another pause. "She seemed, I don't know, she seemed kind of excited actually, which was weird." Ashley drove to Memphis that Saturday. 5 hours door to door, which she did in one stretch because she had never been able to sleep in moving vehicles, and stopping just made the drive feel longer. She listened to 2 episodes of a true crime podcast, and then turned it off because she could not concentrate, and spent the last hour in silence, watching the Tennessee landscape flatten out as she got closer to the river. The sky doing that particular Memphis thing where it goes wide and gray and feels like it is pressing down on you. She pulled up to Whitmore Drive at 4 in the afternoon and sat in the car for a moment before going in, the way she always did, taking a breath of air that was not the air of that house yet, saving it. The red front door looked freshly painted. That was new. There were also, she noticed, 2 cars in the driveway that she did not recognize, a late model white Lexus and a dark gray sedan that looked like a rental. She went inside. Diane was in the living room in her good church clothes, which she never wore on Saturdays unless something significant was happening. She had done her hair. She had put out the good china on the coffee table, which was a thing she only did for guests she was trying to impress. And sitting on the couch, the same couch Ashley had grown up watching television on, the same couch she had slept on during Kevin's difficult period when she had come home to help and needed to be close, were 2 people Ashley did not recognize. A man who looked to be in his mid-60s, trim and carefully dressed in slacks and a button-down shirt, with silver hair and Diane's eyes. Not exactly Diane's eyes. Close enough. And a woman about Ashley's age, maybe a few years older, with the practiced smile of someone who has prepared for a difficult conversation. "Ashley, honey," Diane said, and her voice had the particular brightness it got when she was nervous and hiding it. "I am so glad you're here. Come sit down. There is somebody I want you to meet." The man's name was Gerald. Gerald Pierce. He was 59 years old and he was, as Diane explained with the careful pacing of someone who had rehearsed this, her half-brother. Her father, Ashley's grandfather, the one who died before Ashley was born, the one whose name was on a plaque at Greater Hope Baptist, and who Ashley had understood her whole life to be a kind of quiet saint, had, it turned out, an entire separate family in Birmingham, Alabama. A wife, a son, Gerald, who had grown up knowing about Diane the way you know about something that happened before you were old enough to understand it, and who had spent the last several years, since his own mother died and left him some letters, trying to figure out if Diane was someone he wanted to know. Ashley processed this information with the part of her brain that processed information when the rest of her was too surprised to do anything useful. She sat down. She shook Gerald's hand. She shook the hand of the woman beside him, who was named Renee and was Gerald's daughter, which made her and Ashley technically first cousins, a fact that Renee seemed much more comfortable with than Ashley currently was. "I know this is a lot," Diane said, with the particular phrase people use when they know something is a lot and are hoping their acknowledgement will be enough to smooth over it. "When did you find out?" Ashley asked. "Oh, I've known for a little while," Diane said, with a wave of her hand that suggested the question of exactly how long was one she was not going to answer directly. "How long is a little while, Mom?" "About 4 years. Ashley sat with that. 4 years. 4 years of driving to Memphis, of late-night phone calls about bills and worries, and the weight of keeping everything together. 4 years of mortgage payments and insurance and Kevin's phone bill and the endless small emergencies of her mother's life. And somewhere inside all of that, Diane had been holding a whole separate thing, a brother she had found, a family she had discovered, and had said nothing. "Why didn't you tell us?" Ashley asked. And Diane looked at her with those eyes that Ashley had been reading her whole life and said, with a softness that was real and also somehow made it worse, "I wasn't ready." Gerald and Renee stayed for dinner. Diane had cooked a full Sunday-level spread on a Saturday, collard greens and baked chicken and macaroni and cheese from scratch, and the whole meal had the quality of a performance, of Diane showing Gerald the version of the family she wanted him to see. Kevin was there, charming in the superficial way he could be when he wanted to be, asking Gerald about his life in Birmingham, laughing at the right moments, doing the Kevin thing where he made new people feel immediately comfortable and gave them no indication of what was actually going on. Ashley was quiet. She ate. She watched. After dinner, after Gerald and Renee had gone back to whatever hotel they were staying at, after Kevin had disappeared downstairs, with the excuse of an early morning he definitely did not have, Ashley sat with Diane at the kitchen table, while Diane dried dishes, and Ashley tried to figure out what she was actually feeling. "You seem upset," Diane said, without looking up from the dish in her hand. "I'm not upset," Ashley said, which was not entirely true and not entirely false, but was the most useful thing she could say without starting something. "Gerald's a good man," Diane said. "He really is, you'll see once you get to know him. His daughter is so sweet." "I'm sure they are," Ashley said. "Mom, is this what the family meeting was about? You wanted to introduce us to Gerald." Diane set the dish down and turned and looked at Ashley with an expression that had something behind it. "Partly," she said. "What's the other part?" Diane folded the dish towel with the particular precision she applied to things when she was stalling. "Gerald has been so generous," she said. "He really has. When we started talking, really talking, about a year ago, he told me about some of the inheritance from their mother, his mother, and how she had always felt guilty about what happened with my father, and how Gerald had decided that some of what she left should really belong to me." Ashley waited. "He offered to buy the house," Diane said. The air in the kitchen changed. Ashley felt it like a pressure change before a storm. "He offered to what?" "Buy the house at a fair price. An appraiser came through last month. The house is worth $195. Gerald offered $210 above asking because he wants to be fair. He's going to transfer the money directly." Diane paused. "I've already signed the papers." Ashley heard the last sentence from somewhere slightly outside herself. "You already signed, Mom. When did this happen?" 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks ago. The last time Ashley had been home. She had been in this house 3 weeks ago, sitting at this same table, and Diane had said nothing. had cooked her breakfast and asked about her job, and complained about the woman who kept parking in front of the mailbox, and said nothing. And the mortgage? Ashley said very carefully. The mortgage that I have been paying. The sale will pay it off, Diane said. Both of them, the original and the equity loan. With money left over. Yes. How much left over? Diane looked at the dish towel. After both mortgages and the closing costs and some other things Gerald helped me clear up, about $80,000. $80,000. Ashley had paid, over 2 years, approximately $22,000 toward Diane's mortgages. She had turned down a promotion worth $14,000 a year, a conservative 18-month total loss of $21,000. She had covered insurance, utilities, Kevin's phone, the roof, the alternator, the credit cards, every pot on every floor in every rainstorm. She did not do the full math in that moment because she did not have to. She had always known, the way you know something you have been refusing to look at directly, that the number was significant. And where is that $80,000 going? Ashley asked. Diane looked up. I'm going to get an apartment, something nice and manageable, without all the upkeep, and I want to help Kevin get set up somewhere. He's been down there in that basement for too long, he needs a real start somewhere, and I want to be able to give that to him. You want to give Kevin a start, Ashley said. He's had a harder time than you, Ashley. You know that. You've always been the strong one. There it was. The thing that had been sitting in the room since Ashley walked in. You've always been the strong one. The sentence that had been used her entire life as an explanation and a justification and a closing argument all at once. You are capable, therefore you need less. You are strong, therefore you can carry more. You are Ashley, and Ashley handles it, so Ashley doesn't need to be handled. She drove back to Nashville that night. She did not stay over. She said she had an early morning, which was not true, and she hugged her mother at the door the way you hug someone when you are not sure what you are feeling, but you know you need to leave before you find out. And she got in her car, and she drove, and she did not cry. Not because she wasn't sad, but because she was past the place where crying felt like a response that matched the size of what she was feeling. It was on the drive back, somewhere around Jackson on I-40, that she called Tiffany. Say something, Tiffany said, after Ashley had gotten through the whole story. Tiffany was the kind of friend who let you finish before she reacted. She's giving Kevin a start, Ashley said. That's the phrase she used, a start. Ashley. She said, I've always been the strong one. Ashley, I need to say something, and I need you to actually hear it. Okay. Go back to the house, before it sells. Go through everything. Your grandmother left things to your mom, and your mom has been there for 30 years, and if I know anything about 30-year-old houses, there are things in that house that belong to you. There are things in that house that tell a story, and you need to know the whole story before you decide how you feel about this. Ashley thought about it for 10 miles. Then she said, she already signed the papers. That doesn't mean you can't know what you're losing. She went back the following Friday. She told Diane she wanted to help pack, which was true enough to feel okay. Diane was grateful in the uncomplicated way. She was grateful for things that benefited her. Kissed Ashley on the cheek, pressed a 20 into her hand for gas money without any apparent awareness of the absurdity, and left to have lunch with a friend, leaving Ashley alone in the house with 2 cardboard boxes and the permission to go through anything she wanted. Ashley packed the kitchen first, then the living room. Then she went down the hall to Diane's bedroom. The closet was a walk-in that had been slowly filling since approximately 1994. Diane was not a hoarder, but she was a keeper, and she kept things in the specific way of women who grow up without much. Not randomly, but with intention, boxes labeled in her careful handwriting, things she could not part with maintained with a care that seemed disproportionate to how rarely she actually looked at them. In the back left corner, behind a rack of winter coats that had not been worn in years, there was a gray metal filing cabinet with a small lock that had no key in it. Ashley had seen this cabinet her whole life and had never thought about it. It was just part of the closet, like the smell of cedar and Diane's perfume, and the particular quality of the light from the single overhead bulb. The lock was a cheap hardware store model. Ashley found the key in the 3rd drawer of Diane's jewelry box, tucked under a tangle of costume necklaces, in the place where Diane kept important small things because she believed no one would look there. The 1st drawer was financial documents. Insurance policies, the deed to the house, tax records going back 15 years. Ashley flipped through them with the automatic competence she brought to anything organizational, noting, confirming, cataloging. And then at the back of the first drawer, in a manila envelope with estate, mother, written on it in Diane's handwriting. 3 documents. The first was a photocopy of Ashley's grandmother's will. Cora Me Greer, deceased 9 years ago in Memphis, Tennessee. Ashley had been at the funeral. She had been 25 and working her first real job, and she had driven up from Nashville and stood at the graveside and cried, because she had loved her grandmother with a completeness that she did not always feel about everyone in her family, because Cora Me had been the person in her life who had seen her most clearly, who had never needed anything from her, who had just loved her the way grandmothers in the best stories love their grandchildren, fully and without strings. She had always understood that Cora Me had left everything to Diane. That was what she had been told, but the will said something different. Cora Me Greer had left the house on Whitmore Drive to Diane. She had left her furniture and her personal effects to Diane, and she had set aside, in a specific and explicit bequest, the sum of $45,000 from a savings account at First Tennessee Bank to be held in trust for Ashley Marie Greer, to be released to her upon her 25th birthday or upon her mother's determination that she was financially established, whichever came first. Ashley was 34 years old. She had never received $45,000. She sat on the floor of the closet with the will in her hands, and she read it 3 times because the first 2 times did not seem real enough to be the only time. Then she looked at the second document in the envelope. A bank statement. First Tennessee Bank. The trust account Cora Me had established. Dated 18 months after the will was executed. Balance, 0. Withdrawal date, March 14th, 9 years ago. 31 days after Cora Me's funeral. The third document was a handwritten note in Diane's handwriting. It was addressed to no one and was not signed, and Ashley would spend a long time later deciding whether it was a note Diane had written to herself, or to God, or to some version of Ashley she had constructed in her imagination. It said she would have wanted me to use it for the house. She knew how tight things were. Ashley is young and strong and she will be fine. She always is. Ashley sat on the floor of her mother's closet for a long time. Outside she could hear the neighborhood, a dog, a car, a child yelling something happy in someone else's yard, and inside it was completely quiet. She thought about being 25. She had been 25 and paying off student loans and working a job that barely covered her rent and driving to Memphis on weekends because Diane needed her, always needed her. And somewhere in a bank account in Memphis, there had been $45,000 with her name on it and her grandmother's love behind it, and her mother had taken it. Had decided, in that particular way, Diane made decisions that she knew better. That Ashley was young and strong and would be fine. She took pictures of every document on her phone. She put them back in the envelope exactly as she had found them. She locked the filing cabinet, put the key back under the necklaces, and went back to packing the kitchen. When Diane came home from lunch, Ashley was sealing the last box. Diane looked around the room with the satisfied expression of someone who has made a plan and watched it execute correctly. "You are such a godsend," she said. "I don't know what I would do without you." "Mom," Ashley said, "I need to ask you something, and I need you to answer me honestly." Diane set down her purse. "Of course. Did Grandma Cora leave me money?" The silence that followed was the answer. It was only a second, barely a second, but Ashley had been reading her mother's silences for 34 years, and she knew what each one meant and this one. The quick intake of breath, the almost imperceptible widening of the eyes before the composure clicked back into place, was the one that meant she had been found out and was now calculating how to respond. "There was a small account," Diane said. "It was complicated, there were debts." $45,000, Ashley said. "That was not small." "Ashley, you used my inheritance 9 years ago, the month after the funeral, while I was paying off student loans and driving here every other weekend to help you. I needed it for the house. The roof was going, you know what things were like then." "The same roof," Ashley said, and the words came out very flat and very clear, "that I paid to have fixed 7 years ago." Diane opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. What came out was not an apology, and was not a denial, and was somehow, in a way that Ashley recognized as utterly characteristic, both, "I have done the best I could." "I know," Ashley said. "I know you have." She picked up her car keys from the counter. "I'm going to go." "Ashley, we should talk about this." Not today, Ashley said, and she walked out through the red front door. She sat in the car. She did not start it. She looked at the text message from Kevin that had come in 20 minutes ago while she was reading the will, which she had not seen until now. It said, "Hey, Mom mentioned you might be upset about the house stuff. Don't be too hard on her. She's been through a lot. Also, you've always been the strong one, lol." Ashley looked at that lol for a long time. Then she started the car. She drove to Tiffany's coffee shop instead of her apartment. Tiffany ran a small but perpetually busy place called Secondhand on Fatherland Street in East Nashville, with exposed brick and mismatched chairs and coffee that was genuinely excellent. And she had a back room with a battered leather couch, where Ashley had conducted some of the most important conversations of her life. She walked in, made eye contact with Tiffany across the room, and Tiffany looked at her face and said something to her employee and walked to the back room, and Ashley followed, and they sat down, and Ashley told her everything. Tiffany was quiet for a long time after. Long enough that one of her employees knocked on the door to ask about something, and she sent them away with a word, and came back and sat and was still quiet. $45,000, she said finally. 9 years ago. And she's been letting you pay her mortgage. And the equity loan, and Kevin's phone, and her car insurance, and the... Stop, Tiffany said. I got it. She looked at Ashley directly. What do you want to do? I don't know. Yes, you do. And Ashley looked at the scuffed wooden floor of Tiffany's back room and thought about her grandmother. Thought about Cora Mee, who had smelled like Jergens lotion and had kept butterscotch candies in her apron pocket and had called Ashley baby girl, until Ashley was 22 years old without it ever feeling condescending, who had looked at Ashley when she was 8 years old standing in that kitchen after her father left, and had taken her face in both hands and said, "You are going to be something, and I am going to make sure you have what you need to get there." And thought about what that had meant, what it was supposed to mean, and what it had been used for instead. I want what she took from me, Ashley said. Not because I need it, not anymore, but because it was mine, and because she stood at that graveside and cried and then drove home and emptied the account. Okay, Tiffany said. Then let's figure out how. They spent 3 hours in that back room. Tiffany, who had a business degree and a sharp, pragmatic mind that Ashley had always secretly relied on more than she admitted, pulled out her laptop, and they went through it systematically. The will was clear. The bequest was explicit. The withdrawal was documented. The timing was undeniable. $45,000 taken from a trust established for Ashley by her grandmother 31 days after the funeral. You have a case, Tiffany said. I'm not a lawyer, but you have documents, you have dates, you have amounts. You need to talk to an estate attorney. She's my mother. I know. If I do this, it becomes a thing that happened. Ashley, Tiffany said, with the specific gentleness of a person who knows they are about to say something the other person does not want to hear, it's already a thing that happened. You just found out about it. Ashley called their attorney the following Monday. Her name was Sandra Park, a slim and precise woman in her late 40s with an office on Church Street in downtown Nashville, who had been referred to Ashley by a coworker whose divorce had apparently been handled with devastating competence. Ashley brought the photographs of every document she had taken in the closet. She brought her bank records. She brought a spreadsheet she had put together over the weekend that itemized, as best she could reconstruct, every dollar she had sent to Memphis over the past 7 years. Sandra Park looked at the documents for a long time without saying anything. Then she looked at Ashley. The will is explicit, she said. The bequest was unconditional. The language upon her 25th birthday or upon her mother's determination sets a clear outer limit. You were 25 9 years ago. There's no legitimate basis for the delay, and certainly none for the withdrawal. Can I get it back? The $65,000 question, Sandra said, and then seemed to remember that this was someone's family she was talking about and adjusted her tone. It's complicated by the time elapsed and the fact that the assets have been commingled, meaning spent rather than preserved. You can't recover what doesn't exist, but the original mortgage on the house, is that still outstanding? No, the sale will pay it off. And the equity loan? Same. What about the sale proceeds? Ashley had already thought about this. She had the numbers. After both mortgages and closing costs, $80,000 would remain. Her grandmother had left her $45,000. The money was gone, spent across 9 years on a house that was now being sold for $210,000. There's an argument, Sandra said carefully, for a constructive trust claim. The idea being that your mother held your inheritance, and everything she used it to preserve, including the house equity, as a trustee in breach of fiduciary duty. It would require establishing that the assets she used your money to preserve contributed directly to the equity that's now being liquidated. She paused. It would not be a simple case, but it would not be a hopeless one either. What would it do to my family? Sandra looked at her evenly. That, she said, is outside my expertise. Ashley did not file immediately. She went home and she thought about it for 2 weeks. She thought about Diane at the kitchen table drying dishes. She thought about Cora Mee's handwriting on that will, the specific loops and angles of it, the $45,000 written out in full in the way people wrote things when they wanted to make sure there was no misunderstanding. She thought about Kevin texting her lol. She thought about the Denver promotion. She thought about the check for $47. Wait, she had not told you about the check yet. That comes later. That's important. Keep going. She thought about the night she was 13, and the electricity was off, and she sat at the kitchen table doing her homework by candlelight because she had told herself it was fine. She was fine, she would handle it. She had always been the strong one. On the 14th day, she called Sandra Park and said, "Let's proceed." They did not file a lawsuit. That was not the place Sandra recommended, and Ashley agreed. What they did instead was send a formal legal letter, a letter that Sandra described as a demand, though the word made Ashley flinch, to Diane through her real estate attorney, since the sale was still in process. The letter outlined the bequest, the withdrawal, the dates, the amounts, and presented a formal request that $45,000 from the sale proceeds be placed in escrow pending a negotiated resolution. Diane called Ashley within 2 hours of receiving it. "I cannot believe you would do this to me," Diane said, and her voice had the specific quality that Ashley recognized as the full production. Tears close to the surface, wounded disbelief, the particular pitch she reached when she wanted to make something Ashley's fault. "After everything I have done for you, after everything, I cannot believe my own daughter would." "Mom," Ashley said, "I need you to stop." "I will not stop, Ashley Marie, you do not get to." "Mom." Her voice was steady. She had practiced this. "I found the will. I found the bank statement. I know what happened. I'm not asking you to feel a certain way about it, and I'm not asking you to agree with me that it was wrong. I'm asking for what Grandma Cora left me. That's all. I used it for the house, for your home, for the place you grew up in. I know what you used it for." She paused. "I also know about the mortgage payment, and the roof, and the car insurance, and Kevin's phone." Silence. "I kept a record," Ashley said. "I didn't do it on purpose, not at first. I just kept records because that's who I am. Over 7 years, including the mortgage payments, I sent you, or paid directly on your behalf, approximately $41,000. More silence. "I'm not adding that to the claim. I want you to understand that. I am only asking for what Grandma left me, not for what I gave you, just for what she gave me." When Diane finally spoke, the production quality was different. The tears were still there, but something else was underneath them now, something that sounded like it might be real. "I needed it," she said, and her voice was smaller than Ashley had ever heard it. "I was so scared after your father left, and then when your grandmother passed and I was alone and the house was falling apart, I was so scared, Ashley. And you were doing so well." "I was 25, Ashley said. "I was paying off student loans." "I know." A long pause. "I told myself you'd be okay. I kept telling myself." "I know you did. Does that mean you forgive me?" "It means I understand why you did it," Ashley said. "Those are different things." The negotiation took 6 weeks. Diane, through her attorney and with, Ashley would later learn, some significant pressure from Gerald, who had turned out to be a man of genuine integrity who was appalled when he understood what had happened, agreed to a settlement. $42,000 from the sale proceeds, which was not 45, but was what Diane's attorney managed to negotiate down to, and what Sandra told Ashley was likely the ceiling of what they could realistically expect. $42,000, transferred to Ashley within 30 days of the sale closing. Kevin called her during the negotiation. He called 4 times, which was more times than Kevin had called her in the past year for any reason other than money. She did not answer the first 3 times. On the 4th call, she picked up. This is messed up, he said. You're going after Mom's house money. I'm going after money that legally belonged to me and was taken without my knowledge, Ashley said. She's your mother. She's your mother too. Did she tell you she took Grandma Cora's money? Did she tell you about the trust? A pause. No. She used $45,000 that was left to me to pay for the house she's now selling, while I was also, separately, paying her mortgage for 2 years. I turned down a promotion I should have taken because I was managing her finances from 300 miles away. Ashley waited. Kevin, when was the last time you paid her a bill? The silence was not angry. It was, she thought, possibly the most honest silence Kevin had given her in years. I can't do anything about the past, Ashley said. I can only deal with what's in front of me. She's going to have less money now, Kevin said. Because of you. She's going to have $38,000 after taxes and my share, Ashley said. Which is more money than either of us has ever had at one time. And she's also going to be moving into a new place that Gerald and Renee are helping her find, which I'm glad about. I hope she has a good life. I genuinely do. Do you? Kevin asked, and the question was sincere enough that it surprised her. Yeah, Ashley said. I do. And she meant it. But I'm not going to keep giving her mine. The sale closed on a Tuesday in April. The escrow transfer hit Ashley's account 3 days later. $42,000. She sat in her apartment at her kitchen table and looked at her bank balance on her phone for a long time. The window above the sink was open. It was spring in Nashville, and you could smell the honeysuckle, and the air was the exact temperature that is not hot and not cold, and that she associated with possibility. She called Doug the next morning, her manager at Meridian. He had moved on from her passed-up promotion, but he had always liked her, and she had always known it. And when she told him she wanted to have a conversation about her trajectory at the company and her long-term growth potential, he said he would clear some time, and he sounded genuinely glad she had called. The Denver office had a new opening. Not the same role she had declined 18 months ago, a better one. More responsibility, more visibility, the kind of position that leads somewhere. Doug could not promise her anything, but he was going to make some calls. She texted Tiffany, I think I might actually move to Denver. Tiffany responded in approximately 4 seconds. I'm coming to visit the second you have a couch. The check for $47 came on a Wednesday, the week after the settlement transferred. A handwritten note in Diane's careful script, in the envelope with her name and address on it, slid under the door. She had driven from wherever she was now, which was a transitional thing, staying with a church friend in Cordova until the apartment came through, and she had parked somewhere on the street and walked up the 3 flights of stairs to Ashley's floor, which was more physical effort than Diane had voluntarily expended on Ashley's behalf in recent memory. The note said, for the gas money I gave you last month. I know it was only 20. I'm adding extra. Consider us even. 27 extra dollars. For the most recent trip to Memphis and back. On top of the 42,000. Consider us even. Ashley stood in her doorway with the check in her hand for a long time. She looked at it. She thought about everything it contained. The pride, the stubbornness, the small math of a woman who needed to feel like the books were balanced, who needed to believe that she owed nothing, who had driven across town and walked up 3 flights of stairs to leave 27 extra dollars as the final word on what she thought a daughter was worth. She did not cash it. She did not tear it up. She put it in the drawer of her nightstand, in the back, under things she did not look at often. Not because she wanted to save it or use it later, but because she thought she might someday, years from now, when enough time had passed and enough life had happened, want to remember what it had felt like to finally stop waiting for the acknowledgement that was never going to come, to stop measuring herself against her mother's math, to finally understand that being the strong one was not a life sentence, unless she kept accepting the conditions. She started packing the following weekend. 2 good suitcases and a pod she booked on a Tuesday afternoon. She gave notice on the apartment. She said goodbye to the honeysuckle and the radiator that sounded like a tired old man and the view of Shelby Park from the 3rd floor. She took the pictures off the walls and wrapped them in newspaper and put them in boxes, and each one felt like a decision that was also a relief. Tiffany threw her a going-away party that was small and warm and exactly right. 12 people in the back room of Secondhand, with good wine and a playlist that Ashley had personally approved, and a cake that Tiffany had ordered from a bakery on Gallatin Pike that had You've Always Been the Strong One written on it in pink frosting, which made Ashley laugh the loud and sudden laugh that she had inherited from her grandmother. The laugh that went beyond propriety and did not apologize for itself. She drove out of Nashville on a Friday in early May, with the windows down and 2 playlists ready, and the Rocky Mountains waiting somewhere to the west of everything she had been carrying. She did not send a message to Diane before she left. Not out of cruelty, she had said what she needed to say, and she had said it clearly, and there was nothing in that final exchange that she wished she had done differently. She would call eventually. She would navigate whatever that relationship became. She was not naive enough to think that the payment had fixed anything, or that the distance would be simple, or that Kevin would suddenly become a different person. She knew families better than that. She was a Greer, after all. But she knew something she had not known 9 years ago when her grandmother died, and left her $45,000, and a faith in her future that a woman with butterscotch in her apron pocket had decided to put into writing. She knew what she was worth. And this time, the one doing the accounting was her. Being the strong one had cost her more than she could fully calculate. But she had finally stopped treating her strength as a resource for everyone else to draw on until it ran dry. That drawer in her nightstand, where a $47 check was quietly not being cashed, was not a wound anymore. It was a record. And Ashley Greer did not need anyone to balance the books for her anymore. She knew exactly where she stood. And that is the thing about women like Ashley, they do not break. They redirect. They take 34 years of someone else's math, and they rewrite the equation, and they drive west with the windows down until the numbers finally start to add up. Hey, you made it to the end of this story, and I see you, I genuinely do. If this one hit you somewhere real, please hit that like button right now, because it helps this story reach the people who need it most, and it means more to this channel than I can even explain. Subscribe if you haven't already, because I drop new stories every single week and what's coming next. I promise you, you do not want to miss it. Share this with someone who gives too much, someone who has been the strong one for too long, someone who needs to hear that they are allowed to stop. And drop me a comment right now, your city, your country, and the exact time you are listening, because I want to see how far this story has traveled, and every single comment you leave is something I read and something that means everything to me.